Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, today we are going to discuss the poem The Huntsman by Edward Lowbury. First of all, we notice about this poem. When we read this poem, we notice that it is a Kenyan folk lore. It's a Kenyan folk tale. It is a Kenyan folk story. So this poem is a Kenyan folk story. It is a narrative poem. A narrative poem is a poem in which some story or some incident is narrated. So in this poem, The Huntsman, there is a small incident which is narrated, and it is about a huntsman, Kagwa. Kagwa is the name of the huntsman in this poem. So this poem narrates the story of a Kagwa, how he was wandering in the forest, and one day while he was wandering in the forest, he found the skull of a man, and just by way of joke, he said to the skull, "How did you come here?" And the skull answered, "Talking brought me here." So it was a strange thing that a skull spoke. So when he was stunned to hear this, he ran to tell about the talking skull to the king. He went to the king. He came home and went to the king, and he reported the matter of the talking skull to the king. The king had never heard such a talking skull before. So he couldn't believe. He ordered two of his bodyguards go with Kagwa and find the talking skull. And if the tale of Kagwa was a lie, he ordered to kill Kagwa there on the spot. The guards went with Kagwa in a carriage to the forest. For days and nights they found nothing. They searched the skull but they found nothing. After some days they found the skull. Now Kagwa asked the skull the same question, "How did you come here?" But the skull did not answer. The skull said nothing. Kagwa implored, but the skull said nothing. So now God said Kagwa to kneel down, and they killed him with sword and spear and went away. When the God went away, the skull opened its mouth and said, "How did you come here?" And the dead man answered, "Talking brought me here. Talking is the reason of my murder. Talking brought me here." So we see that the Huntsman is a narrative poem in which the story how Kagwa came across a talking skull and how he was finally killed and answered the same question, "Talking brought me here." So one thing that it's a narrative poem and it's a Kenyan folk tale. It's a Kenyan folklore. The second thing about this poem is that it has a lot of irony and suspense. Irony and suspense. Irony means the perverse arrival of events. The things happen just the opposite what we expect. Irony implies the difference between how things should be and how they are, between what a person says and what he actually does, between what a person expects will happen and what actually happens. So irony means the perverse arrival of events. Similarly, suspense means curiosity and eagerness to know. Curiosity and eagerness to know. Suspense and irony are the two major feelings which are here, which are used in this poem, The Huntsman, to keep the interest alive in the poem. So irony is found in the very title, The Huntsman. The title is The Huntsman, but in this poem, the huntsman Kagwa does not hunt anything. So he becomes hunted in this world because of his over talking. So we see that Kagwa himself becomes hunted. So the title is ironical. The title is ironical. Similarly, irony is found in all of the major events of the poem. First of all, we see Kagwa is wandering in the forest and he comes across a skull. He spoke to the skull. In real life, the skull never answers. But in this poem, the skull answers. And it says, talking brought me here. So it is a truth. Talking of the skull is a truth. स्कल का जो बात करना है ये एक सच है. Kagwa is unable to understand this truth at this time, which is ironical. And he understands the truth when he himself dies. And at this time it is too late. So there is irony. Kagwa is not able to understand the truth. Now after that, Kagwa runs home and goes to the king, informs the king about the skull. Maybe he thinks to get some reward from the king. But instead of getting reward, Kagwa gets the orders to be killed if his tale is a lie. And he gets the orders of his death. Because when he reaches again to the skull does not speak. Here again, the huntsman asks the skull, how did you come here? At this time, the skull should speak, but the skull does not speak at this time. It speaks when Kagwa is killed. When Kagwa dies, again it is ironical. So, in the end, irony comes to an end. Suspense is also found when from the beginning of the poem to the end of this poem. When in the beginning, Kagwa speaks to the skull and skull replies. Suspense is created because it is a supernatural incident. The speaking of the skull is a supernatural incident, and in a supernatural incident, there is always suspense. Kagwa runs home and we want to see what Kagwa is going to do. He informs the king about the talking skull. Again, king orders to find the skull, and if the skull doesn't say a word, kill Kagwa there on the spot. Here again there is suspense because we want to see what will happen with Kagwa. We want to see whether skull speaks again or not. And for the bad luck of Kagwa, skull does not speak now, and it speaks when it should keep quiet. And in the end, all irony and suspense comes to an end. So irony is there to expose the helplessness of man in the supernatural world. This world is controlled by some supernatural authority which is out of the reach of man, and man is not able to understand the to understand the truth at the time he should understand. It is a reality that man is not able to understand all types of truths. Man should seek the truth, but he is not able to understand with his mind all types of truth. So there is advice in this point. Don't seek the truth which is not meant for you. Another thing that we notice in this point is that we have a very plain message at the literal level of this poem, and that is we should not speak too much. Silence is gold. Silence is gold. So we should keep quiet. We should be silent where we need not to speak. We should speak where we need to speak. So in that we can say it is a very beautiful Kenyan folk tale with some messages showing man's state in the supernatural world.